sponsored by NYSDOT. Then I also work on some other transportation projects across the country. We're now wrapping up a regional TDM strategic action plan with the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission, which is the MPO in the Pittsburgh area. I'm very passionate about transportation demand management in particular. I've been car-free since I left my childhood home, and feel that the behavior change and social norming around transportation is a big challenge and often overlooked in the overall transportation picture. It's not sufficient to focus on, on its own. The kinds of infrastructure we have, the mobility services are really important in, providing a set of options for people, but the demand management, the promotion, education is a really important and powerful piece, and I'm excited to be focusing on that and sharing some experience with you from Buffalo, and also learning about everything that's going on here at Ithaca, because I know that you've been doing a lot of hard work for many years now on a range of different initiatives. This is only my second time in Ithaca, so I'm very happy to be here. I'm based in Buffalo, but I grew up in Burlington, Vermont, so I feel there's kind of a kinship between the two cities, and I feel very much at home here. So thank you again for having me. We have a lot of time, and I have a lot to cover. I don't want to go down too far into the weeds for you, but also want to give you some good kind of background and a deep dive into everything we've done. So I'll start out with some background on how we formed the Transportation Management Association in the Buffalo Niagara area, where we are now after we've gotten over the initial formation, and where we hope to head in the future. And then also some TDM policies and case studies from around the country that are great best practices to look to. So first I'll talk about our process for forming the TMA and some background on the project that we formed it during. So the impetus for forming a Transportation Management Association came out of One Region Forward, which was a federally recognized plan for sustainable development that the GBNRTC in Buffalo led, and it identified establishing a regional transportation management association as one of the key strategies to reduce single occupancy vehicle travel and average vehicle travel on a daily basis. And this was building on initiatives at the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, which really has been the leader in the Buffalo area for TDM. They started their Go BNMC program in 2012 with preferred carpool parking, guaranteed ride home, some free transit incentives, and they were successful with that. And so that is why in the One Region Forward process, a Transportation Management Association was seen as a good way to advance our regional goals, because it had worked on the medical campus and we wanted to scale it up to the regional level. So who are we? Right now we're based at Go Bike Buffalo, which is a nonprofit for bicycle advocacy that has been very active and effective in the Buffalo area for increasing recognition and awareness about bicycling and bicycling safety. And they are seen as sort of the go-to source of information for bicycling, but also alternative transportation in general. And so I'll talk more about how we arrived at Go Bike. We didn't start there, but it's been a really effective partnership for us. And we're powered right now by 511 New York Rideshare, which, as I mentioned, is the statewide transportation demand management program. And other partners that we work closely are the GBNRTC, the NFTA, our transit agency in Buffalo, the medical campus, and then the Buffalo Niagara Partnership is the Regional Chamber of Commerce.
Interrupt if we, or you rather.
I would, yes, please interrupt me.
So what do you mean by powered by?
Powered by, right now we are funded through an assignment on NYSDOT's 511 New York Rideshare contract with ICF. So the fund being
So
for...
powered means funded by.
Well,
or,
in this particular case it does, but we also use the Powered by 511 New York Rideshare for the regional rideshare portals that NYSDOT and the 511 New York Rideshare program build and host, but they're really branded for a particular region and are customized for them.
One other question. So you're actually with ICF on contract, or?
That's right.
Because I was remembering your name connected to ICF ages ago.
Really?
So, yeah, I
Okay.
can't remember what project, but.
Okay, yeah,
Okay, so that's also a structure that's interesting.
it is, yeah.
I don't know.
And it's, I'll talk about how we got there. It's a little unique, I think, but it's been working so far. So this is, we don't always talk about what a Transportation Management Association is and what TDM is. For a lot of consumers and even employers, they don't necessarily need to know the acronyms and the jargon and the concepts, but I think it is helpful in some cases. And so this is just to show you kind of how we talk about what a Transportation Management Association is and what TDM is to stakeholders that have an interest. And so we're member-based, and we're a pool of public and private partners that come together to address the transportation issues that they share in common. And TDM is a set of strategies as to how we accomplish that, really focused on behavior change and promoting the different transportation options that we have available. Promoting those options is really how we frame it to the public rather than managing demands.
But you promote, you don't facilitate or help create. Have there been instances where you had to actually create a tool that doesn't exist?
That's a good question. We haven't created our own tools. We've used 5-in-1 New York rideshares. We have a website. We've created kind of incentive programs and promotional programs, but we haven't created or operated any tools or services that are unique to the TMA. And so we really started with a website, gobuffaloniagara.org, before the TMA was formed and staffed. It was just this resource that served as a kind of clearinghouse for all the different transportation options in the region. And also a branded 5-in-1 New York rideshare page, which is the screenshot in the lower part. And that is their free statewide ride matching system where people can find carpools, or if van pools are available, van pools. And then also there are some tools to find park and ride lots, plan routes by transit and biking, things like that. There's also a trip tracker. And to move beyond those online tools, we received a grant from NYSERDA and NYSDOT, I believe under the same program that the Ithaca Smart Trips program was funded, to create the Regional Transportation Management Association. So we received that grant in 2016, and it ran through early 2018, and the NFTA was the recipient, but the GVNRTC, the MPO in the Buffalo area, was really the project manager, and they led the project. So that was when I came on board to manage the TMA at the GVNRTC, so I was initially a GVNRTC employee, and for a year and a half, that's where the program was sort of incubated. And this is the timeline and kind of the deliverables that we went through for those first 18 months. So again, that was late 2016 to early 2018. We formed a steering committee for the project. So that was the GVNRTC, the NFTA, the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, Go Bike Buffalo, and the Buffalo Niagara Partnership, the regional chamber. And we put out an RFP to create a business plan for the TMA. We wanted to have a consultant come on, bring some out-of-town expertise as to how other TMAs function, and what some funding sources would be, and how to structure it. And so we brought on Wells & Associates, a firm based in Virginia, to do the business plan. And that laid out the first 3 years of operations. And I'll go through some of the recommendations in the business plan about structure and funding and things like that. For implementation of the TMA services, we established a downtown working group. So that was mostly developers and employers. There were some representatives from the city, but and some nonprofits, but relatively biased towards the private sector, just to get that perspective on the needs for downtown and their businesses. And with the guidance of that working group, we did a 3-month downtown pilot program where we provided incentives to employees at 5 major downtown employers. And then performance evaluation was sort of the final task. It was ongoing throughout the project, but to evaluate the impacts of the pilot program and ongoing outreach across the region. So I kind of went through these details. We formed a steering committee. The TDM coordinator, me, was based at the GBNRTC and really led the implementation. We had a business plan consultant and then the downtown TDM working group. And so now I'll talk about the regional TDM model that we arrived at. So what the business plan recommended the structure of the TMA should be. So we wanted to keep this regional umbrella, which was really the idea or the concept that came out of the One Region Forward plan I mentioned. We wanted a broad regional program to provide a basic level of service across Erie and Niagara counties for TDM. And it was recommended that the program be based at Go Bike Buffalo rather than the GBNRTC or some other government entity or the NFTA. Go Bike Buffalo really had the strong relationships with the business community through their work, and like I said, they were sort of the go-to organization for information about alternative transportation broadly. And as a 501c3 nonprofit, they had the fundraising flexibility that a governmental entity like the NFTA or GBNRTC did not. They would be able to raise funds, provide services on a fee-for-service basis, and that was just seen as more advantageous in terms of flexibility on funding. So under the regional program, we have what we call Go Districts. So the Go BNNC program at the medical campus is the only Go District currently, and it's the initial TDM program in Buffalo that the regional program is based off of. But the idea is that other employment centers such as downtown Buffalo, Niagara Falls, maybe the University at Buffalo campuses, major employment centers would form their own Go Districts, possibly led by business improvement districts or smaller chambers that would serve as a more localized point of coordination for the regional services.
How close are you at getting some?
We were hoping that a downtown Go District would form out of the pilot program that we did, and there's some momentum downtown because of a perceived parking shortage and some infill development that has replaced surface parking. A lot of stakeholders kind of have awoken to the need to really think beyond just providing parking within a 5-minute walk as the access solution for downtown. So in terms of organization, we thought that maybe the downtown business improvement district would be a good host for a Go District, but they haven't really had the capacity to do that. And the business plan is kind of flexible in the language of what is a Go District. It doesn't have to be its own entity. It can be a program of an existing nonprofit, but just the level of coordination isn't there with any downtown stakeholders to really start it up. But we're hopeful, like I mentioned with the development, that one will be forthcoming soon. So in developing the business plan for the TMA, this is the process that we went through. We had a stakeholder kickoff meeting where we went through kind of a modified SWOT analysis for the region with regards to mobility and access. We did a national peer review of 6 other TMAs or regional TDM programs that are comparable in the market characteristics and transportation landscape to Buffalo. We had the downtown TDM working group review the organizational structure and the framework of the business plan to see if that makes sense to them with a regional umbrella and a Go District focused on downtown and elsewhere. And then we developed an implementation plan that goes through specific actions over the first 3 years of the TMA's operations.
Is this a slide? Is this what the consultant did? That Wells group?
They led the stakeholder engagement, the peer review. They facilitated a lot of this, and then they distilled it in the plan. So this is the funding strategy that they prepared. prepared for the business plan. So this is the first 3 years of expenses, about $245,000 per year between staff, overhead, and then marketing and other kinds of direct costs related to events and promotion. And these are the revenue sources that were presented in the business plan. So split about equally between CMAQ. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, congestion mitigation, air quality. It's a federal program that is made available through the New York State Department of Transportation on a competitive basis every few years for upstate. A NYSERDA grant, and then private foundations. Fee-for-service is revenue that's generated through consulting activities of the TMA, and I'll talk more about that, and also through memberships to the TMA, event sponsorships, and organizational partners.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Organizational partners is like a business that may not want to become a member, but just wants to kind of have their name affiliated with the program or the organization. This came out of really Go Bike Buffalo's funding model. They have a lot of partners and sponsors for their events that they don't necessarily work with them as employers or organizations on bicycle friendliness, but they like sort of the visibility of large scale events like the Skyride or the Slow Roll.
Sounds like a marketing role.
Yeah.
Almost like an event sponsorship, kind of, or?
Yeah, similar to event sponsorship, but I think the organizational partner can be broader than that, so not necessarily just tied to events, but presented by logo of the organization for different activities that the
So
program
then-
does.
Within this budget, should we assume the fee for service are the memberships from those organizations receiving some kind of TDM benefit by being members?
Right.
Okay. Does it also include more like a la carte classes or programs that?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so if this was the budget from the consultant, we've actually been able to, so far, within the past year, we launched TMA membership in June of last year. We've been able to generate about $44,000 between the memberships and the a la carte fee-for-service stuff. So again, this is sort of a ballpark that was in the business plan, or a forecast of sorts.
So just a detail, a bad news, that we don't have access to CMAQ funds here. So that's related to this congestion mitigation, air quality. And it's for places that have poor air quality and are seeking to meet national standards. And we meet national standards. We lose out on the money. So we don't have access to that particular line of funding.
Yeah, and
There may be other federal lines of funding, but that one in particular, which is a very useful one, and it's been used for many of this type of projects, we just don't have it.
right, and it might be a good thing. There are a lot of strings attached to
Yeah.
CMAQ implementation, so it is one of the primary sources of TDM funding nationwide, but it is possible to get by without it.
There's trade-offs with using federal money, you'll probably know, there's a lot of loops.
Yeah. So in our marketing approach, we kind of serve everyone, which has been a little challenging with primarily a staff of one. So we provide direct service to all commuters in Erie and Niagara County. So if any individual has a question about whether you can park overnight at a park and ride lot, or what's the best transit route based on where I live and where I work and my schedule, we provide that service to individual commuters, and some of that is provided online through the 511 New York Rideshare portal. There are tools that they can use to kind of service themselves. We also work with employers, so exploring commuter fringe benefits and things that they can do as an employer to accommodate access to their site by alternative transportation, and then property owners and managers, so developers or other property owners that are working primarily with tenants, either residential tenants or commercial tenants, and want to provide some amenities on site or maybe provisions of a lease. The Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus has some lease provisions related to TDM, but I don't believe any other property owners in the region have done that yet. So let's talk about some of the outcomes of this pilot project. Again, this was the 18-month first phase of it, and the regional outreach was an ongoing piece across the 18 months, so meeting with businesses, with developers, with employers on what their issues were, and the issues are really diverse across Erie and Niagara counties. We were talking a bit about this before. There's the downtown core issues of perceived parking limitations and a relatively high level of transit service and other options. But then there are also employers that are in more remote areas, and they draw from a lower income transit dependent workforce, and they're having trouble getting people out to fill open positions because there isn't a good transit route and transit is not cost effective there. Presenting to stakeholders, that could be potential partners in creating Go districts, so like the Downtown Business Improvement District that I mentioned, Chambers of Commerce, localized for specific towns. Global campaigns, so offering incentives during Earth Month or Car-Free Day for people to track a trip by alternative transportation. And then tabling and on-site events either at employers as a part of a lunch and learn kind of presentation, or a student benefits fair at a university, or some kind of community event. I talked a bit about the downtown TDM working group that we convened to advise specifically on the downtown pilot program and implementation of TDM strategies. We really wanted them to serve as a kind of a model for a downtown Go district, and their input was valuable, but they didn't continue to meet after the project was over. And so for that pilot program, it ran for 3 months. This was the summer of 2017, so July 1st through September 30th. We started developing the incentives in April and recruiting employers in May and June. We did cold calls to about 40 employers in the downtown area, and then focused on distributing incentives and communications to employees in July through September. And then we kind of pulled back and evaluated the impacts in September and October. And the timing of the downtown working group meetings at the kickoff, kind of right before we were about to launch the incentives to make sure they were kind of okay with the plan, and then at the very end to evaluate how it went. So these are the 5 employers that participated. They represented a pool of about 1,730 employees. So Delaware North is sort of a hospitality company. They're global. Their headquarters are in Buffalo. They had about 400 folks there. Inspired Dental Group was a relatively new small dental office. Hyatt Regency, a hotel. City of Buffalo, they have about 700 employees at their downtown City Hall location. And then Hudson Russ is a law firm. And so it was a mix of public and private and different kind of industries and shift types. In late June, when we first announced the program to employees, we asked them to fill out a survey to better understand their baseline commuting habits. This is response bias, but 96% who answered the survey were interested in a commuter program. 40% drove alone. 47%, so almost half, never drove alone. And that was kind of a tension or struggle with any kind of incentive program. We really want to focus on the people who are currently driving, get them to change their behavior, but you don't want to exclude people that are already using alternative transportation. So the reasons 60% said a discounted transit pass would encourage them to commute by transit. Discounted transit or free transit was by far the most, what we heard the most about being desired in terms of incentives. The reasons for driving alone were needing to run errands before or after work, or just preferring to drive their own car. Their motivations for using alternative transportation were cost savings, and then the stress of driving in traffic. And the bus was the most common alternative mode that they were willing to try, followed by carpool, bike, and then rail.
Is that assuming there was bus service they could use and they were looking for lower cost? I mean, was money the only impediment, or is this assuming the service was there? 'Cause that's the
Yeah.
hard part, I mean.
Right, getting the service to everyone. Yeah, I think the cost was just because if they have the car, it's kind of a sunk cost.
Right.
And the additional cost of gas and parking may not be on par in their sort of mental calculus with the cost of getting a transit pass on top of that, which is $75 full cost. Downtown parking is generally higher than $75, but I think their interest in using alternatives is really motivated by that cost savings.
Not surprised.
In terms of this survey, can you give a quick overview of how you distribute it, who received it, and
Yeah, we distribute it through the employer contact, so usually it was almost in every case someone in HR, like the HR director, who would then, it was electronic, and they would distribute it via email blast, or I think one of them put it on their internet page, so we really relied on the employers to get it out. And again, this was just the 5 employers that participated in the pilot program.
I was wondering what your pitch was to the employers to get them interested in participating.
That's a good question, because it was difficult. We tried, we reached out to like over 40 and we got 5. And I think the pitch was, this is a free benefit, we'll administer it, we'll distribute the incentives. This is an opportunity for you to do something innovative, provide, a new benefit for your employees. And their hesitation for all those that declined, I think, was offering something temporary and not being able to guarantee that they'll be able to continue to provide it, and then also just an aversion to any kind of coordination or administration. We tried to minimize the administrative burden as much as possible, handling all of the communications with people who signed up and distributing the incentives, but we still ask for them to do things for us every now and then, like sending out an email with a survey and announcements to people about the incentives in the middle of the program to try and get more people to sign up, that sort of thing.
And you did this after you had the incentive program kind of set?
Yeah, we continue to try and boost enrollment.
But did you do the survey at what point in that time?
We did the survey before we launched the incentives, the baseline commuter survey. So this is the package of incentives that we offered. Give Transit a try, so a free 7-day Metro Pass in July or August. This was the most popular reward, but it was also pretty limiting. Now we have some more tools and technology that make it a little bit more flexible. It was a physical paper pass stamped for a particular 7-day period in July and August that we had to get out to people. And so if it didn't work out that week for them, it's too bad.
Something similar than that stuff?
Now we have, the NFTA has Token Transit, it's the app. They serve a lot of different cities. Yeah, and so they can do customized pass types.
Sam Daly's Harvard graduate, he's the head of Token Transit.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's very cool. But yeah, and now the medical campus this past summer worked with them to do a special Give Transit a Try pass where it was for a month and it was all digital, which is much easier. So we had the free 7-day transit pass, monthly Metro rewards. We offered gift cards via an electronic or digital rewards vendor called Tango Card. They're very flexible. They allow users to pick from dozens of brands, and you can customize the amount and send out the rewards electronically. We would have preferred, instead of providing a gift card for people who got a monthly Metro Pass, to discount the cost of the monthly pass. That was our first choice, but the administrative burden of doing that for a 3-month time period, dealing with the employers and with the transit agency and handling the flow of funds for the discount was just too much. So we went with this gift card option. And then we also offered free annual memberships to Ready Bike Share and Go Bike Buffalo. A guaranteed ride home, so it was in partnership with Lyft, so they gave us some promo codes and we were able to create a geo fence around downtown, so the trips had to start downtown. They had to be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. We also offered prizes for trip tracking. So the 5 New York Rideshare program has a mobile app for trip tracking. There's also a trip tracker within a rideshare portal. And then we also created a survey, like an online form if people didn't want to use the 511 system for trip tracking. So we offered raffles on a monthly basis for anyone who tracked trips, and then a swag bag for anyone who tracked at least 10 per month.
Stay there for a minute. I have a couple questions. The monthly Metro Pass rewards, help me understand, I'm not quite understanding. Is that like 1 month free? Is that just, here's $50 to apply toward the Metro card over the period of time?
Definitely, yeah.
What was it and how did you determine what it was and who you gave it to?
Yeah, so that was a gift card, an electronic gift card to anyone who purchased a monthly Metro Pass. And so we asked them to send in proof of their monthly Metro Pass,
okay.
a photo, and then they got an email.
A gift card that can be used for what?
It was this vendor that allows you to choose from dozens of brands, either online or in stores,
Oh.
like Starbucks or
Oh,
Amazon.
okay, like that. Okay, so we've seen that with some national vendors. Yeah.
Yeah, this one. They also can donate to nonprofits if there's
But there was
What was the
nothing
name of
local.
that
You
service?
didn't have local. You didn't have like a local. We have a downtown gift card
oh,
ourselves
Okay.
that we do.
yeah.
And like that, I would assume that at the bid and my expand in Buffalo would have some similar thing as well. No.
They do. Yeah, this is a national vendor. They're called Tango Card.
Tango card?
Tango Card, yeah. And it worked for us because it was all electronic. Distribution was very easy, and there wasn't any additional cost to us aside from the value of the rewards cards we were distributing.
But those are all national. Starbucks, Walmart, I mean, they're all national scale things,
Yeah, I like gift cards.
Was there an initial attempt to talk to the downtown employers to try to get them to subsidize passes for their own employees? Because that seems like a logical approach.
Yeah, that's a good question. Some cities have been successful with that. We talked about it at the Downtown Business Improvement District, pointing to examples like Columbus. Their bid has subsidized and created free transit passes for all downtown employees, and that's been very successful. But there hasn't. I guess we haven't made a proposal, in that level of sort of specificity, asking them to consider that. But there's
Well, they're paying membership fees, so,
to the business improvement district, right? Or to the.
or to go local to the gaming.
So at this point, we hadn't created the membership program. This was just a
Okay.
3-month pilot program.
Got
This
it,
was before.
got it, got it.
Yeah.
And in the trip, tell us about your trip tracking. So how religious were people on trip tracking? When we did it here, we had a terrible response to that.
Oh, really? It was the second most popular incentive. I have a slide a bit later on that shows all the metrics.
Oh,
like
right.
trips
Oh,
tracked.
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, I have a question. On the free annual bike membership item there, the Ready Bike Share and Go Bike Buffalo, what benefits do they offer
That's a good question.
for that free membership?
Yeah, so Ready Bike Share, the free annual membership is the cost of the annual pass, so it's $55 and they get a membership card, but then they still have to pay to ride the bike share system, so it's a penny per minute if you're an annual member. If you get a shorter term membership, it's more expensive, I think it's 6 cents per minute. But we set them up with that free annual membership, so they just have to pay for the penny per minute of riding. And then Go Bike Buffalo, their individual members get access to a community workshop where there are volunteers that can help people to fix their bikes, and there are free parts and refurbished bikes for sale. And then also the membership to Go Bike allows you discounted entry to events like the Sky Ride and things like that.
I was gonna ask what your overall goal was. Did you have a certain number of cars you had to move off the road, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. We didn't, so we wanted to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips, the mode share of that.
Did you have like a certain percentage you needed to reduce it by?
We did not have a specific target.
Okay.
And a part of the business plan was to look at our sort of baseline levels from the most recent data and try and set a target, but we didn't wind up doing that because the MPO's long-range plan was happening kind of at the same time, the long-range plan update, and they didn't want to commit to something before that plan was finalized, and they wanted any particular target setting like that to go through sort of the federal regional planning process. So the MPO's,
I wonder if anybody
the plan update, it's done now, the update moving forward 2050. It's a great plan, but I don't think it sets any specific targets.
So you just tracked that through the trip tracker?
Yeah, that was the one metric of outcomes. We had other metrics around engagement and people we had reached that way, but in terms of shifting people, that was really our data source.
Excuse me.
So this is
One more question.
Hi, and I'm sorry for being late. Did you guys all introduce yourselves?
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah,
know.
Dawn.
So I'll say hi. I'm Dawn Montagna, and I'm with Way to Go, Cooperative Extension, we do transportation education.
great.
I'm wondering about the employers. You talked about the reasons that potentially 35 didn't participate. Was that time frame not being able to commit? Do you have a sense of why the 5 that did participate? They all have very individual reasons. I'm wondering if you could generalize some lessons about what
Yeah.
did sort of get them to commit to even that pilot.
I think they had like wellness programs or
Mhm.
environmental initiatives that this fit into, and they were kind of thinking about ways that they could do better with commuter benefits anyway. Or they were just kind of really struggling with parking and looking for anything that could help.
So all these had, those 5 either had some built-in initiative already, or they had a chronic problem like parking, most likely parking, that they wanted to deal with.
Yeah.
Would that be true?
Yeah, I think, yeah, Hyatt Regency, it wasn't necessarily parking, and I don't think they had any organized initiative, but because they were dealing with, staff coming in at all hours, 24 hours of the day for different purposes, they just knew that transportation was a barrier for some people and getting to work and keeping a job, so they were just looking for, other things to try. So this shows how many employees from each workplace signed up for each incentive over the 3-month pilot. So Give Transit a Try had the highest participation, 67 employees. 30 of them primarily drove alone to work, so over half were already doing alternatives, but 30 tried it for the first time. Monthly Metro Rewards was the lowest level of participation, and they were all folks that were already buying monthly transit passes, who were not successful in nudging anyone from a free 7-day pass to getting a monthly pass. The Ready Bike Share and Go Bike membership were, the Guaranteed Ride Home actually we received positive feedback about it, but nobody wound up using it. I think because of the short period and the relatively small pool.
So they signed up, but they didn't use it.
Mhm.
Fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding a bunch of.
Yeah, low cost, no cost. And then trip tracking, like I mentioned, was the second most popular
Now,
incentive.
you had that, you had a hotel in there, the Hyatt,
Yep.
which only seemed to, I mean, obviously it seems to be, this menu you had, at least the pilot, seemed to be à la carte, not sort of, here it all is, help yourself, there's all of them. They seem to be picking and choosing.
Individual.
Yeah. So the Hyatt only really got involved with the bus, and had no interest in anything else.
Right, and very small number of employees. I think a
Small
part of
number.
that was only 5. The challenge there was just that it was hard to reach staff. I went and tabled at a monthly breakfast that they have for all employees, but they're not checking email. They don't have an email account. They said their employer, and we put out flyers in common areas. But I think it's just harder to reach commuters that aren't desk-based. Yeah.
How many total, you said 1,700 total employees?
So there were 1,700 total among the all employees at these companies, at these employers, but 88 participated. So that's a participation rate of 5% or so of employees at
That's a
these.
really good benchmark number to know.
Yeah,
So we expect the
Yeah.
comparison.
and so these are the impacts of the trips tracked with the trip tracker. So we have vehicle trips avoided, cost savings, vehicle miles reduced, 88 user supported, 9,600 pounds of carbon dioxide prevented, and then about 36,000 calories burned walking and biking. And we surveyed all of the participants after, and I think I have some data from that survey in a little bit, but the comments really heartened me about the impacts. Sometimes when I'm feeling down, I just read these to myself and just a little bit. I'm only kind of kidding. So we also, because participation was lower than we budgeted for, like I said, there were 88 people that were signing up for incentives, and not necessarily for all of them. We opened it up to all downtown residents, so we sent out a direct mailer to about 3,700 downtown residents and offered these incentives. So these are all things that can be distributed electronically. You'll notice the free 7-day transit pass, the physical piece of paper is not on here. So these are all things that they could sign up for over email, and we could distribute to them over email. And so 27 individuals, 19 households registered, so that's a response rate of 0.5% of the 3,700 residents. But I think that's, I should say residences, so that's just like addresses, so much more people or individuals. But I think that's pretty typical for direct mailers. I think we maybe could have followed up with some targeted digital outreach and some other strategies to try and kind of get to them better. So this summarizes kind of key themes from the feedback we received throughout the program, and also as survey responses and general comments at the end. So first, many thought the program was a good idea, but it didn't apply to them because they live too far from work to use transit or bike, and so that suggests it would be valuable to elevate carpooling in the future. It's not very glamorous, but it is a strategy that's applicable across the region, relatively low-hanging fruit, and with the free 5-in-1-year rideshare tool, easy to facilitate. The Give Transit a Try incentive was useful to introduce new riders to using the bus. Like I mentioned, we weren't successful in getting them to take a plunge for a monthly pass, but it at least it nudged them towards using transit more often and got them more comfortable. Even people who already used the bus or other alternative modes really appreciated the program, and so that just emphasizes that it's important to include everyone and not really focus on shifting people who are currently driving. And then guaranteed ride home provided valuable peace of mind. Like I mentioned, it wasn't used at all, but it's still important to offer. It's low cost, it's a safety net. So given the enrollment numbers and comments, these are some of the lessons learned from the 3-month pilot program. As I mentioned, enrollment was lower than expected, though the goal is to shift drivers to alternative modes. Rewarding long-time bus riders is important. Enhancing carpool rewards to capture many that maybe couldn't use any of the alternatives. In terms of the incentives, the free 7-day Metro Pass was the most popular. The gift card reward for the monthly Metro Pass was not a big motivator. In the future, we think directly discounting the cost of that pass is going to be a much more powerful motivator for people to try. We'll continue to offer the guaranteed ride home because of its value as a safety net and low cost. It was easy to administer. And then the trip tracking was an easy way to engage people and also collect some data. That was really important for demonstrating the impact of the program. But overall, in the future, we found that simplifying the incentives and the offerings would be valuable. We wanted to, test a lot of things out and see how they worked and how people responded, and so that was valuable. But I think they complicated the program and overwhelmed some people, and so focusing in the future on these incentives, I think is the route that we're going to go. Performance evaluation, so this was the last phase of that 18-month grant. So we wanted the performance criteria to align with One Region Forward. The final report kind of describes the quantitative and qualitative metrics for each criteria, but we measured the direct impacts from the pilot program on people's commutes, but then also really our outreach was what we measured, and the number of people we were willing to engage through different avenues, presentations, tablings, etc. So this shows the impact of the pilot program on future commute choices. So you can see that in green, about 28 people will use the bus more as a result of the pilot program. And I should mention this survey that we sent out to the 5 employers that participated, this was to all employees, not just those who signed up for incentives. So even those who didn't participate were still influenced to some degree by the fact that the program was out there and promoted and that their colleagues were participating. So this was also a valuable metric for us in showing that a significant number will use alternatives more and drive alone less.
What was the time frame on figuring out? I mean, was it taken 3 months after the program ended, or was it 6 months after the program ended?
That's a good question. It was a little less than a month. We ended at the end of September and we sent out the survey at the end of October.
Because one of my things is in the transit world, I mean, when you offer free transit to anyone, in my opinion, there's a lot of people that have a fear of something they don't know. They have never taken transit. It's a little scary in some respects,
Yeah.
how to use the fare box and where the bus goes. But
Yeah.
people that can use it during that trial period will be more reluctant to use it again afterwards. So I think that's a great thing to have those options.
Yeah, absolutely. That little bit of experience with it. So these are regional metrics, our mode split across Erie and Niagara counties. The drive alone mode share is inching upwards, unfortunately, as it is in a lot of regions, but the impact of the pilot program and the success of the Go B&MC program on the medical campus show that TDM programs with commuter incentives and support are really effective in changing behavior. The medical campus surveyed commuters last year and found that the drive alone rate was 80%, which is down from 88% in 2012. So our final report is up online. If you want any and all details, I encourage you to take a look. The link is down there. And so next I'll talk about where we are now with the program since this NYSERDA grant has ended. But are there any other questions about any of the incentives or outreach before I move on?
I actually had a question, kind of related, but I'm always curious because it depends on the region, but how much of the transit budget does the fare system capture? What percentage of transit revenue comes from fare
That's
box?
a good question. I believe it's around 30, like below 30%, which
Wow.
I understand. Is it? Okay.
Very high. In Rochester, it's about
For here,
7%.
Okay.
Rochester is about 7% or so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
What's the tenant?
8 to 10. But it says Cornell.
I know the NFTA really cut back service, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago and consolidated it on the kind of core frequent routes in the city and cut a lot of suburban routes. So that probably shifted that fare recovery up quite a bit.
And the reason why I ask is because we kind of touched upon it a little bit, but in terms of like creating fare-free zones, especially in business districts at parking rides, has there been any more discussion about extending that way? Commuters who are getting those like free pass benefits, they can be extended throughout the year. And like you said, a lot of people, when they see these types of incentives and they see that it's only like a month or a week or so, it kind of discourages them a little bit, or they participate once and then they don't participate again.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's any discussion about extending the NFTA's free fare zone. They do have the free Metro Rail above ground downtown between Canal Side and I think Fountain Plaza. There was another station a bit farther north around the theater district, but that was taken out. But I agree with you that that's a helpful way to kind of lower the barrier to entry year round. And
Because if the revenue from the fare box is low enough, there might be opportunity for discussing alternative funding sources to make up that gap in a way that would make fare-free zones an option.
yeah, and you're thinking of businesses in the area contributing.
Or possibly parking fees, if there's an increase in parking fees, you can accompany that with, directing that directly into transit service, therefore closing that gap and maybe even lowering the overall fare instead of a complete fareless system, instead of lowering the actual.
Yeah. The NFTA does have some cost sharing arrangements if this usually happens with suburban employers. They want a bus line, there's not one there now. They can demonstrate the ridership to add some service, or they can pay an annual fee. But that doesn't make the service free to the riders, it just creates it. But definitely partnering with employers on making transit more accessible, either a new service or reduced cost-free service, is an interesting direction.
Okay. It looks like that from what you've shown us that the city hall was involved in sponsorship or was supportive. Was there any friction from any various entities, political parties or anything when you started moving forward with this?
Within City Hall.
Support, yeah, no, outside of City Hall. Looks like City Hall was in support of all this, but any problems with the county or any other entities that were opposed to or gave you any issues with this?
No, we didn't really have any kind of,
Did you ask the city or county for any money,
no.
any incentives?
That's your answer, probably. Okay.
The county is now a dues-paying member of Go Buffalo Niagara, so and the city is not, but we're working more.
And why isn't the city, I mean, that's one of the first things I noticed immediately when you put up those lists of partners.
Mhm.
no governmental entities on there. Why is it the city of Pembroke?
It's a good question. I think they just feel like they don't have the capacity right now, but they are thinking a lot more about TDM recently. We met with them just a couple of weeks ago, and they're thinking about kind of shifting their whole parking system to be more holistic and not just have a parking operator, but have it linked with all these other options. And with the green code, the zoning ordinance, and requirements for developments to plan for TDM, they're monitoring, and they're starting to monitor and enforce those sorts of strategies more with the private sector, but they haven't taken a real strong leadership role so far. But based on recent meetings, they're definitely thinking along those lines.
When you mentioned linking the parking system holistically in the community, that they're thinking about that, like, what's the mechanism for that? Like the technology that's out there, online, apps, or?
Yeah.
And are they thinking about the money associated with that? And just like what's associated with that? That's a big
It's
thing.
a big undertaking, yeah. I think, to be honest, they don't really know what the best technology solution is. There are a lot of kind of smart parking, smart cities firms that, provide software platforms that integrate all these different services and information, but customizing it to a particular agency instead of service providers is always going to be different, and especially if there's going to be fare payment and things like that. So I think they're gonna probably put out an RFP and see what they get, but parking revenue is a significant source of funding for the city. I forget the number, but a lot of the parking revenue goes into the general fund, and it's a significant source for just general operations. And so I think in the past there's been hesitancy to kind of earmark some of that and put it towards TDM or similar kinds of initiatives, just because it's needed in so many other areas.
You wouldn't know from the dialogues if their revenue, if they have a positive revenue and not a subsidy for their whole. You say a lot of their parking revenue goes into the general fund. Do you know if they have a subsidy to that, or they're actually making more money than the cost of it?
I think they're making money, but I don't think that's sustainable long term, because the condition of so many of the ramps is very poor, and the technology needs to be upgraded. So I think it's probably just a short-term thing.
Because we're on the negative side here, and we're facing lots of structural issues, and we're hoping to try to close that gap. And it's a tough battle.
Yeah.
So, when you were first talking to companies about this program, what did you say would be the long-term goal? Like how to continue it after the pilot ended? Did you tell them about the formation, the possible formation of a TMA, and they could be a member, or was that not on the table yet?
It wasn't clear and guaranteed that it was going to happen, but we said that, the incentives, the funding for the incentives won't be available, but we're happy to support you in kind of continuing to develop your program. And so it was more of an offer of technical assistance and helping them to leverage the free online tools like Rideshare, and doing outreach and customizing like marketing materials, things that we could do without an incentives budget.
Okay. And are you going to talk about the green code, or can I ask you to now?
Yeah, I can flip forward to it.
Oh, that's okay, I just wanted to.
Walk through where you're headed.
Yeah,
Curious to see where,
Okay.
what this all means in terms of where you're going now.
Sure, I'll go quickly because I know we're limited on time and there's a lot here. So when the NYSERDA grant ended, we were rolled into the statewide 511 New York rideshare program. So it was an 18-month assignment on the 511 New York rideshare contract to do this upstate urban TDM program pilot and assessment. So the idea was to continue implementing the TMA following the recommendations of the business plan, but then at the same time doing some research on what the best model would be for TDM in upstate urban areas, focusing on the larger areas of Buffalo, Albany, Syracuse, and Rochester. The 511 New York rideshare program, as some of you may know, has traditionally focused in the downstate area, very much New York City, Long Island, Mid-Hudson Valley focused, and just in recent years, there's been a kind of strategic expansion to better serve upstate regions, and so this pilot was meant to kind of facilitate that, but then also position the TMA for operations on its own outside of the 511 New York rideshare. So it was another 18-month kind of temporary setup, and we're just at the end of it right now. At the end of the year, I think the assignment will wrap up. And so these are the tasks and the deliverables under that assignment. So we first inventoried all of the elements of the TMA as it had been formed under that NYSERDA grant. We put together a performance and financial evaluation plan with the expected budget and also the return on investment for the TMA, using tools like the TDM ROI calculator that Mobility Lab developed with federal highway support. Task 3, continued outreach and program delivery. That was really the bulk of the effort, to get businesses involved and get reach commuters with support. And then we also are holding upstate virtual TDM forums with the 4 large NPOs, Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany, and then doing some peer research on costs and services of regional TDM programs, and again looking at ROI and sort of the cost per unit of service and support provided for national peers to get a kind of cost benchmark of sorts, and then creating an upstate urban TDM program template that can be adapted by other TDM programs, and thinking about the kinds of services and the levels of funding available and complexity factors like availability of other services and changing trends and technology and demographics, that sort of thing. So this all, again, will hopefully wrap up by the end of the year and be available if you're interested in any of the deliverables.
Are all the major regions participating then? Albany, Syracuse, Rochester? Are they all on board doing something?
Yeah, all 4 are participating in the TDM forums. There's kind of varying levels of implementation in each region.
Yeah, because I'm unaware of some implementation in some of those regions.
Yeah, I think Rochester, Albany is probably the furthest along in terms of integration of TDM services with the CDTA and the guaranteed ride home that they offer region-wide, and bike share and transit incentives. And from what I understand, they're really looking to kind of move towards a mobility as a service kind of model as an agency. Rochester, we recently developed a Rock Easy Ride rideshare portal with them that they had a portal on a different software provider, but they moved it to 511 New York rideshare, and they have the van pool program that the city sponsors with CMAQ funding, and they recently started their bike share program, and their transit agency, of course, is moving towards a more flexible model in outerlying areas, replacing fixed route with kind of zones where people can get rides on more of an on-demand basis. And Syracuse, they just recently got bike share, Gotcha Bikes. I think it's the first all-electric assist fleet in the country. And they're starting a van pool, I believe, with the county. So Syracuse is probably, in the earliest stages of developing TDM programs. So, like I mentioned, the current assignment with 501 New York Rideshare is temporary, so we applied for a CMAQ grant last August. We sent in the application, and we found out we were awarded this past April. And it seems like the funding will likely be available early next year. So that covers another 3 years of implementation for the TMA, $760,000 in the award, and then another couple thousand in local match, so it's just under $1 million total in the value of the operations for the program. So it includes a full-time program manager for the TMA and a part-time outreach specialist based at Go Bike Buffalo. I should mention between the NYSERDA grant and the pilot program that we did, and now with our partnership with 501 New York Rideshare, the program has moved from the GVNRTC over to Go Bike, so we've accomplished that part of the business plan. And so under the CMAQ award, Go Bike is the subrecipient under the transit agency. They're the project sponsor. So there's also a budget for marketing and education, a regional guaranteed ride home, a discounted Metro Pass during Clean Air Month, the month of May. One of the limitations of CMAQ is that you can't really use that funding to subsidize transit on an ongoing basis, only around specific air quality events. And so doing a campaign during Clean Air Month was a way to make it a little more predictable and consistent for people than just around poor air quality days. We're also doing van pool subsidies modeled after the Rochester program, the $600 per month. And then there's also some downtown capital projects that we worked with the city and the nonprofit parking operator BCAR on a bit. So there's going to be preferred carpool, parking signage in downtown garages, and then 6 new bike share docking stations downtown. And so we've offered with our move to Go Bike Buffalo and as a part of this 501 New York Rideshare program, we've offered a TMA membership benefit and then some a la carte services. This started back in June, as I mentioned, and so far we have 4 TMA members, and we've provided TDM planning services to properties that are subject to the green code requirements, which I'll talk a bit more about. But this has been a valuable way to diversify our revenue streams. $44,000 this year, which exceeds the local match that we will be required to provide with the CMAQ award. So if we keep it up, we should be in good shape. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through this. This is the second to last section. The last section is more about the green code and case studies of other cities that have done similar initiatives that I think you'd be interested in. But this is just sort of an overview of where we are now and the services and programs that we promote to employers and the general public. So we always start with an overview of the benefits of transportation options. These are infographics on the health and wellness benefits, some stats on risk of cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure from taking transit or walking or biking. We also talk about the environmental and air quality impacts. Last year, Erie County inventoried greenhouse gas emissions and found that transportation was the highest source at 41%. So that's why they are a CMA member, and that environmental motivation is really why they decided to do that. And then also air quality. Buffalo received an F for ozone from the American Lung Association. Work-life balance, so although Buffalo is talked about as the 20-minute driving city and very, low traffic compared to other regions, it's still 40 hours per year that the average driver wastes in a typical year just in traffic jams. So that's just inching along or sitting still. That's not the rest of the commute. So that's an entire work week or over $900 in lost value.
It's not when it's snowing.
Yeah, exactly. Having to shovel and yeah, deal with all that. So we also talk about the corporate benefits for employers in terms of recruitment and retention of talent, employee health and satisfaction, recognition for being green, and then also for developers meeting the green code requirements.
I appreciate how in that corporate benefits slides here, I mean, you're speaking to a broader set of benefits than simply, you know, what we might think of more strictly transportation benefits.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Does that resonate with employers, those broader set of benefits?
Yeah, definitely. Particularly in Buffalo, it's more, to some extent, in the urban core, where they're looking to attract from out of town for very, you know, highly skilled positions. They want to show that Buffalo is competitive as a place to live with larger metropolitan areas. But then also in the outer lying areas, like I mentioned, a lot of manufacturers and other kinds of employers are really struggling with workforce and getting people out to the jobs and staying in the jobs if there's not reliable transportation.
So having a strong TDM program helps certain employers become more attractive to potential workforce and therefore provide a workforce as part of a workforce attraction scheme. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do regional outreach, like I mentioned. This is a little redundant with the pilot program phase, but we continue to you know, present to stakeholders and companies and organizations and such to get out to the public. We also do digital outreach campaigns. So for Earth Month and Bike Month, we offer incentives for anyone who tracks trips in the Trip Tracker. It's a way to engage people, get more users in the 511 New York rideshare system, and just promote general awareness around these special time periods. Our website tools, like I mentioned, we have the gobuffaloniagara.org website, which is sort of a comprehensive directory, and then it links to the regional rideshare portal. The rideshare portal supports these rideshare modes, not Uber and Lyft, carpooling, vanpooling, bike buddies. I always, every chance I get, tell people that Uber and Lyft are not ride sharing, they're ride hailing. We have our regional rideshare portal that's powered by 511 New York Rideshare, so it's on the 511 New York system, but it's branded for Go Buffalo Niagara and has all the local information. We also have some customized employer portals for the medical campus, the University at Buffalo. A benefit of TMA membership is that they get their own portal, and then employees actually register for benefits, which I'll talk more about through the portal. So we are really leveraging 511 New York Rideshare's technology and systems for our own kind of administration of member benefits. There is a trip tracker that's both on the rideshare portal in your browser, or you can download it as a mobile app. So again, we use that for digital outreach campaigns like Earth Month, commute perks, and then just generally encourage people to track their trips, and all of those metrics are
Is that
quantified.
Power 511?
What software are you using? That's the 511 software. That's
Yeah.
511 software.
Yeah, the trip
So
tracker.
if I go to 511 right now, I don't see it.
Yeah, I've been looking for it, well, I've
No,
been
I
looking
can-
for it on your site, I can't find it. Where is
If I
it?
go to 511.
It's it's called Trip Tracker, the app,
Okay,
it's called Trip Tracker.
on 511.
It might be hard to find on the
Is
website.
511 like app mobile friendly?
It can be used on for like the ride matching and all the other tools. It can be used on a browser in your phone, but it's not a great experience. They are enhancing it right now to be a lot more mobile friendly and allow for things like single trip matching, where if you don't want to find a ride match for a regular commute, but it's like a college student going home for a break and they want to find a ride for a long distance trip, it'll support that.
It will support that, because they did it for a long time.
I know.
So we didn't use them. So this is, okay, so this is not just available in those big cities that they're doing this study.
Right, it's statewide.
There's a lot of statistics, like a dashboard.
There is for individual users for the trip tracker, but this is just the trip
I
tracker.
need an overall for everybody, what we're doing as a community. And dashboard that has live statistics?
I
No?
don't think there is.
Okay, it's kind of cool.
There could be, probably. Right now, we're running a digital outreach campaign in Buffalo, around referring a friend to 511 rideshare and submitting a testimonial. We have a page on the Go Buffalo Niagara website called Go Getters, and it has a photo and like a little testimonial from people who use different modes of transportation to get to work. So they're pretty old, we want to update them. So this is offering a $15 reward card for anyone who sends in a testimonial or refers a friend. And we're doing this primarily through Facebook ads. So these are the special benefits that are packaged into TMA membership. They were on that slide I showed a little while ago that showed TMA membership and all the cart services, but these are the individual benefits to commuters. So the guaranteed ride home, discounted memberships to Go Bike Buffalo and Ready Bike Share. We offered those for free during the pilot program. They're just discounted now. We didn't really have a dedicated incentive budget for this program, which is why we couldn't really offer more. But this is something, because we're partners with Go Bike Buffalo and Ready Bike Share, that we're able to provide on an ongoing basis. Discounts to Enterprise Car Share and Rent a Car, and then monthly raffles for tracking trips.
So, guaranteed ride home, how many annual opportunities does your program provide?
We set a cap of 4
4.
and $50 per ride, but we're talking to one employer now who is they're relocating far out, and they're concerned that won't be enough, so we're gonna up it to $75 cap for them and just, adjust the fee a little bit.
What have your trips been running?
We haven't had anyone redeem.
Okay, great.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
Right, so it's pretty easy
So
to raise that cap. if nobody's done it.
Who administers the guaranteed ride home program?
We do. So we have it set up on the rideshare portal where a user, I should mention, any individual who wants to access these benefits does so through the portal. So they create an account, and there's a sign-up page in web forms where they register. And for the guaranteed ride home, they register, and then we have it set up on a reimbursement basis, which we thought would be the most flexible and best suited to a regional program. For the downtown pilot program, we use Lyft, and we have these promotional codes that we distributed, and that works pretty well. But on a regional basis, we're not really able to target in that way, and ride-hailing services like Uber and Lyft aren't always available in the more remote areas. So we have it set up now where a user can get a ride home with whatever mode of transportation is most convenient for them, and they just submit reimbursement.
We've been using Lyft Concierge,
Okay.
so,
And it's been working pretty
well,
well.
for the 2 trips. I don't know that there's been a number of, so we've gotten a number of calls, like 8. And some people just opt out, like after they call, they'll call back and say, oh, I got a ride, which is great.
Oh, wow.
Or they, something happens and they don't need the ride anymore. But we can give them a number of options
Okay.
to choose from, but we're paying for it.
Yeah.
They don't have to pay anything.
That's great. So the Lyft is just an option, kind of among
They can
others.
choose, yeah. Sometimes a bus might be the option. If they're a car share member, they can take a car share car.
That's great.
So what does it cost to be a business member?
So we have the pricing structure set up where it
I
is.
didn't mean to send you backwards.
That's okay. It's just helpful to. Yeah, I guess I don't know where it went. We have a $200 base, and then it's $10 per employee, up to a $5,000 cap. And similarly, that's for employers. We also have a pricing structure for developers because of the Green Code. TMA membership is a way that they can meet those requirements, and so that pricing structure is a $200 base plus $10 per, I want to say, 100 square feet, up to a $5,000 cap.
You have 4 members so far?
We have 4 members, they're all employers. One has said that they're planning to become a member within the next year. It's the property owner, it's a developer I have a slide about them, but they became a TMA member because of a development project that we helped them with their TDM plan. It was controversial because of parking. And so after we developed the TDM plan for them, they wanted to become a member as an employer to kind of walk the talk. And their headquarters are within this larger complex downtown. So they are now a TMA member, but within the next year, they're planning for the whole complex to become a TMA member as a property.
I have just a question about the, I'm considering the cost of incentives as you go through them. And I don't remember if you said specifically in the budget that's coming forward for the new project funding, that you're talking about almost $1 million for 3 years, a staff person and a half. So it's a little over $300,000 a year. What percentage are you allocating for incentives? And do you think about how many people, have you identified how many people you could potentially serve with those incentives?
Yeah, we have some estimates for the free monthly, or actually it's a discounted monthly transit pass for Clean Air Month. We're expecting 500 people to sign up for that and have budgeted for that at $40 discount. And then the van pool subsidy is pretty significant. I think that's $72,000 per year. For $600 per van pool for 5 van pools, and then the guaranteed ride home, I think we have a budget of about $20,000 per year for that. So the 1 million too also includes the downtown capital project. So excluding those, it's really $290,000 per year for TMA operations.
About 100,000 for incentives per year, you think?
Yeah.
Serving how many people? I mean, if we're thinking about it as a ratio here, right?
Yeah. It's serving all of Erie and Niagara counties.
Right, but how many do you anticipate participating?
Directly using?
Yeah.
I think our target is, I want to say a couple thousand signed up. That's not necessarily redeeming like guaranteed ride home,
Right.
at least kind of registering.
Okay, thank you.
So partner programs, we work to help the NFTA promote some corporate programs. They have their pre-tax monthly Metro Pass program, and then a couple years ago they launched this corporate discount where any employer that orders at least 25 passes per month and discounts the cost of a Metro Pass by at least $10 will be matched by another $10 from the NFTA off. So it's kind of like a bulk discount program. We also support these other services and promote them. E-Bike Share and Go Bike Buffalo, of course, are packaged into TMA membership, discounts to those programs. We also promote Zipcar. We have some materials from them that we always put out. We did have Buffalo Car Share, but Zipcar got them out. And then Enterprise Ride Share, they offer van pools now, but without that subsidy, it's really not affordable for people. So we put it out there, but until that subsidy comes online, I don't think we're going to see any active van pools. So transportation options in practice. I do want to talk about the Green Code, so I'll go through these kind of quickly. These are just some examples of other organizations in the area and what they do. So Go BNMC, they are sort of the original TMA. They offer secure bike storage, guaranteed ride home, 2 free parking validations per month, so that if somebody has to drive 1 or 2 days a month, they can. They serve as an umbrella for that corporate pass program where if a small business doesn't have 25 monthly passes, they can still take advantage of that discount by pulling together with other small businesses under the medical campus umbrella to take advantage of that. They do annual Give Transit a Try promotions, like I mentioned this summer with Token Transit. They offered a month-long pass and then free annual passes to Ready Bike Share for all employees and students on the medical campus, which is about 18,000 this year. They grew by about 2,000 because of some recent development.
Who pays for the alternative parking there? Who paid, is that, that's parking controlled by those institutions themselves?
Some of it is. Some of it is controlled by the PNMC. It's a mix. And so the rates, I think the BNMC sets a rate floor at $89, but some of the garages are operated by like Calida or Roswell, the two major hospitals there. Erie County has become a TMA member. Like I mentioned, they have that commitment to the Paris Climate Agreement, so they have secure bike storage, they host a green commute fare, and then the standard TMA benefits. And then Simonelli Real Estate Corporation is that developer that I mentioned that became a member to kind of walk the talk of their project. And this is the project. It's between the NFTA's bus station and the downtown library. It's now a surface parking lot with almost 400 spaces, and the plan is for over 200 units of affordable housing and a fresh food market with a mobility hub, and I think just under 30 parking spaces. It was very controversial because of the parking. People thought it would be a parking apocalypse, but we really focused on the mobility hub feature and helped them plan out all the different amenities and how to promote it and brand it so that it's not losing parking, it's creating all these other options. SUNY Erie recently rebranded from Erie Community College, became a TMA member really for the guaranteed ride home benefit. They already have done some good things like provide free transit passes for all students, and they offer a free shuttle system between their 3 campuses. We work with the Regional Chamber of Commerce on workforce access issues. They convene a workforce development coalition that's really focused on getting low-income individuals without vehicles out to job opportunities that are not served by transit. So this is sort of an ongoing, we haven't really found any solutions, we kind of just talked about the problem, to be honest, but there have been a couple employers that have stepped up and are starting to fund shuttles from downtown out to more suburban locations. It's traditionally been thought of as the employee's responsibility to get to work, and there's been hesitancy for remote employers to really see that as a consequence of their location decision. But like I said, there's a group of employers in the southern suburbs of East Aurora and Elma that have started a shuttle, and then another group in Cheektowaga are strongly considering it. So next I'll talk about TDM policies and case studies that are relevant to Buffalo, our own, but then some others that may be interesting for you to look into. So the Buffalo Green Code requires most new developments over 5,000 square feet, and then major renovations over 50,000 square feet. In most parts of the city, there's a few zones that are excluded from that, like industrial areas, but they have to prepare a TDM plan that commits to strategies that reduce estimated vehicle trips by 10 to 20% over 2 years is the first monitoring cycle. I'll talk more about monitoring, but they first have to estimate baseline travel demands, and there's a preferred methodology that the Green Code sets out that I'll show you. They apply different strategies to earn the 10 to 20% reduction credits. 20% is the requirement if they're within a quarter mile of the metro rail, and then 10% is the requirement everywhere else. They have to detail the implementation time frame and then file the TDM plan concurrently with major site plan review. And then the plan is approved by the zoning administrator during site plan review, and approved or disapproved or approved with modification. So this is their preferred methodology. It uses the Institute for Transportation Engineers manual, which has some biases towards suburban data sources. It's based on, I don't think it's controversial to say, it's based on the square footage of your development and land use that spits out the peak parking demand and travel demand. There are some steps in here that kind of are supposed to adjust for more urban infill locations, but it's still not perfect. It does allow flexibility if you don't want to use the manuals in this process. If you justify some alternative means, like taking a census of, like if it's an employer that's relocating, you take a census of your employees and how they get to work now, you can use that instead of the manuals. So these are the TDM strategies and credits. This is a summary that I created. They're kind of spelled out in more detail in the policy guide that I can provide you with a link to if you'd like to take a look. But these are the general strategy categories, and then and the details on how they must be implemented, and then the credits that are available through each strategy. So you'll see some of them are percentages that count towards that 10 to 20% reduction requirement, but some are in terms of trips, which is, I think, kind of needlessly confusing. There are some systems that only use points and every strategy just has a point value, but for trips, you just convert them into percentages based on the first step of the planning process, your estimated travel demand. So if it's 5 trips that are reduced out of 100, then that's a reduction of 5%. So these are a mix, as you can see, of kind of physical design amenities and more programmatic strategies. And membership in a TMA is in there, and it's 2%. And so within TMA membership, between guaranteed ride home, discounted bike memberships, we provide 10%. So that's kind of the value proposition to developments to become a member, is that we'll get you 10% of the credits you need, and then membership also covers the implementation status reports that are required every 2 years. So that's a big burden off of the development's shoulders. And so these are the reporting requirements. They have to produce an implementation status report after 6 months to show that they've gotten all of the strategies that they committed to in the TDM plan off the ground and operating. And then 2 years after that, and then every 2 years thereafter, provide either a brief status report. This is for projects under 50,000 square feet that are a bit shorter than the comprehensive status reports required for larger projects that need to actually collect data by mode and do an analysis of mode share against the objective that they set in the TDM plan. These status reports can go for however long the city determines necessary, but they must go for at least 10 years. After 10 years, the zoning administrator has the option to waive the requirement for the development to continue to produce the status report updates.
So they sign on as a mitigation effort for their development, for TM, to join the TMA. They're signing on in perpetuity?
It's on an annual basis.
I know, but you're, basically what you just said, I think, was that after 10 years, the city could maybe relieve them from having to do that, but
Right.
but technically,
I see what you're saying.
they're signing on for a life membership.
Right, if they decide that they don't want to be a part of the TMA at some point, then they have to find another way to make up, the credits and the strategies and show that they're still reducing the trips that they committed to.
So can you speak to a couple more details, like you said they have to get a certain number of credits specifically related to TMA for project approval, I presume, through site plan review?
Yeah.
And then, so there's some kind of formula, almost like our green code now.
Yeah.
So I just want to understand that better.
Mhm.
And then, to follow on to Gary's question, like, okay, so they commit to doing this, they commit to writing reports. What happens if they don't meet their targets? Is there any type of enforcement or compliance measure that's put into place, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so in terms of the credits, the first part of your question, the first step of the process is for the development to estimate the travel demand in step 2. So that sets kind of the baseline number of vehicle trips and the parking demand that they expect the project to generate. And based on where they're located, if they're near a metro station, they have to reduce that by 20%, both the parking and the vehicle trips, and anywhere else 10%. And so they select from this menu of TDM strategies to get to that 10 or 20% reduction. And you'll see that some of the strategies have a percentage assigned to them in the the Green Code TDM policy guide. And some are a number of trips. So for example, adding additional bicycle parking. Separate from the TDM requirements, there are minimum bicycle parking requirements for all developments in the Green Code, but adding additional bike parking above and beyond those minimums is a TDM strategy. So they receive 1 credit of 1 trip reduced for every 5 bicycles parking spaces that they provide, or 20%. So that's the number of trips, and they have to get up to a 10 to 20% of the total value of the trips and parking in order to meet the requirements here. Does that make sense?
Now, you put that together, I mean, this was done with the city, obviously, so while the city's not giving you any money, the fact that the city collaborated with you on participating in this is really significant.
How did that happen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you work,
How did, yeah,
The
how
membership
did that
and
happen?
the Buffalo-
It's part of the Buffalo Green Code, it's the
Yeah.
This is
city-led
a
zoning
part-
overhaul that they did.
But how did that happen? How did that happen?
become a part of
the Green Code?
Yeah.
And how did membership in the TMA become part?
Yeah, that's a good question. The policy guide and the Green Code really happened like before and right as we were starting up. So I think they were aware of the regional TMA, but it's not necessarily exclusive to the Go Buffalo Niagara program. Another TMA could start up, or like a Go district,
But
like
there
a
weren't any when
BNC.
they passed it.
There was the medical campus.
So there's-
Yeah, and there was one development that used that as a part of their credits, and again, it's not a requirement, they don't have to join the TMA, it's just
Right.
one option
Right,
on the
right,
menu.
right.
But it does get us 2%, which is not the highest.
so you didn't, or the TDM people didn't push for these to be a part of the Green Code, they were already there?
I mean, we met with the city and the consultant that developed the policy guide just about best practices and data sources for like the credits, and but we weren't, we didn't have significant influence on it.
I mean, there are other credits in the Green Code other than TDM credits. You just pulled out the TDM credits.
Well, this is a summary, I think this is pretty comprehensive. The credits are specific to TDM, so these are just the requirements for the TDM plan.
No,
So the other credits
So
for the other.
by joining the TMA, you automatically get the guaranteed ride home, a carpool program.
So you basically
bike-
get,
Discount bike, so you get
to
not just
10%,
2%, you get
Yeah.
a bunch of them. So
but if you joined the TMA that didn't have those?
Then no, so this is very advantageous.
This is just for new development, right? Or is there any way, I mean,
It's,
everything has to be compliant with zoning, I guess, to a certain degree, so
Right.
was some of it
it's, new
retroactively, implemented somehow, I don't know how that would be.
Yeah, it also applies to
Existing
to renovations that are over 50,000 square feet, new developments over 5,000, and the requirements only apply once this policy code was adopted. It was adopted in March 2017, so there are a lot of developments happening as it was formulated that don't have to abide. And in fact, I don't think any of the developments that have prepared a TDM plan are at the point where they haven't finished construction, they don't need to start implementing yet. So it still remains to be seen how these will play out in practice.
Are there penalties if they don't meet their targets?
That was the second part of your
Yeah.
question, yeah. They have to modify their strategy. There isn't like a cash fee or anything if they don't meet their requirements. They just have to demonstrate that they're trying something different or trying something more. If after, a 2-year status report, it shows that they're going in the wrong direction or not meeting their goals.
But there's no, if they just don't.
Sounds like it's pretty
If they don't do anything,
Yeah.
that's a good question. I don't know if
There's some
there's,
communities that are harder, that
Yeah.
are harder.
Well, I mean, we never passed council.
Yeah.
And who's checking, who's the
Well,
regulator?
the checking is the
It's like the zoning
report they
administrator.
have to
zoning
give.
administrator,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
We should wrap this up. People have to leave it, but we said people live be over by 2, so
Sounds good.
what's within 5 minutes, we'll kind of wrap this up.
Okay. The rest of the presentation goes through what some other municipalities have done, other case studies. So this is a list of all of the municipalities I could find that have TDM policies that are integrated with the development approval process and the date that they approved those policies. So Arlington, Virginia was the first.
That's okay.
There are a few in California. Buffalo and San Francisco were the most recent, and quite a few of these, Arlington and Rockville, Maryland, Montgomery, Maryland are in the DC area.
That's great.
And so this is the San Francisco TDM program. Again, it's fairly recent. They have a menu of, I think it's 66 strategies, so pretty long, and it's all based on a point system, which is, I think, a bit more intuitive than the Green Co's mix of percentages and trips. But this similarly applies to developments that meet a certain size threshold. It's a bit more involved in that there's a site visit before the certificate of occupancy is issued, but very similar in terms of the role of the TDM plan and the monitoring on an ongoing basis and the way that the strategies are meant to reduce a baseline kind of travel demand estimate. Arlington County, again, it's one of the first municipalities that created a TDM program, and this shows some stats, that created a TDM policy related to site development. And these are some stats from recent years, how many properties went through the process. So between 6 to 11 TDM plans approved, and existing properties with all of these amenities. So since they started, the requirement in 1990, 137 to 173 have had TDM or bike parking requirements. And they also have site visits as a part of their process. And the TDM program is administered by a program of the county, Arlington County Commuter Services. And I have a bit more information about Arlington County on this slide and the relationship between TDM and transit-oriented development. The sort of land use, transportation interactions are very influential. So I think it's a prime case study for revitalization through transit-oriented development in TDM. Arlington was a declining suburb of DC in the 70s. They fought strongly for an extension of the Metro Rail system. And as a result, the population has grown significantly, 38% of population, 35% in jobs. But with this growth, they haven't added any road infrastructure, and traffic has in fact gone down by 20% since 2000, which is pretty impressive. And the Arlington County Commuter Services TDM program started around 1990 with that TDM requirement, but they really expanded in 2000. And so since then, developments that have TDM programs have seen double the transit use and reduced driving by 30% compared to those without TDM programs. So that really shows that TDM programs do have value and kind of amplify the effects of transit-oriented development and improving access. And Arlington County Commuter Services, they serve about, they reduce on a daily basis about 45,000 trips by driving alone. And then Lloyd District in Portland, Oregon is the last case study. It's a shopping and employment district across the river from downtown Buffalo. They had 3 light rail stations open in the 80s, and there were several kind of public investments that made it an employment center, government office complexes, there was a sports arena, and there was a TMA for the Lloyd District established in the mid-90s, and that was with funding from a business improvement district and also parking revenue. And the biggest benefit the TMA offers is a kind of passport for transit passes. So it allows every employee in the TMA free, unrestricted access to all the transit and a free taxi ride home in case of emergencies. And that transit program grew out of an agreement to eliminate free parking. So businesses that receive that benefit, they can't provide free parking, and they have to share parking revenue with the program, and for
To
new
employees?
developments, they're limited.
To employees?
They
mean,
can't,
Assuming not.
I assume that was municipal parking.
They can't,
I think, no, this was parking of the businesses.
Yeah, a lot of the lots there are actually privately owned and
but
controlled.
they're trying, so they're not providing free parking for employees, like it's not about
The
customers.
businesses are sharing the revenue that they're making on that with the program?
With the program, yeah. Yeah, and it's to employees that they're limiting the free parking. I'm sure that they're
Right.
charging for special events and such.
I have to find out more.
So a lot of major employers are on there, and that's the
Yeah.
TMA that's very employer driven.
Yeah.
I used to do some work for them as a contractor.
Oh, really?
I did bike commute classes in
Okay.
the mid 2000s.
Yeah, they've been very successful. As a result of this program, transit demand doubled, and it led to improvements in transit service. So again, the heavily discounted or free transit passes, the parking caps for new developments, and then the elimination of free parking really reduced congestion and kind of spurred increased transit service and accessibility and more activity. So it's another good example of integrating TDM measures with transit-oriented development and development requirements.
I have a quick question, because from what I took away from these two case studies is that they had two primary components. They had a pretty good investment in a transit-oriented development and transportation infrastructure along with TDM. How do you see TDM maybe acting as a catalyst in areas where you don't really see that kind of infrastructure investment?
Yeah, definitely. I think it can be a catalyst, but it's harder when those amenities and alternatives aren't as visible. But in order to justify an investment, it can be a good first step. And this slide kind of gets to that. It shows the effectiveness of different TDM strategies on their own, independent of location and kind of context. It's so hard to measure the effectiveness of TDM strategies, right? They vary so much by what's around and the level of service, but this is the most comprehensive study that I've come across. It's a Transit Cooperative Research Program report published back in 2010, and it has data from over 80 work sites across the country, and it shows the percent reduction in vehicle trips at each of these sites, according to those that did adopt a TDM strategy and those that didn't. So those that did is in the blue bar for each strategy, and those that didn't is in the red. So you'll see that parking management strategies had the most significant trip reduction impact in general, just under 25%. But the biggest differential was a discounted transit pass, a modal subsidy. There's almost double the rate of reduction between those that didn't and those that did. So I think parking management is a part of the supply, and if you don't have the transit-oriented development, to your question, or the other services, by really managing parking effectively, you can catalyze some of the behavior change and the cost-benefit calculations that people are making when deciding whether to carpool or.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely an awareness of that here in Tompkins County, the fact that, like, parking is, too cheap. Sometimes, you do need to, and it's too available despite these conceptions that there's not enough, and it's not cheap enough.
Yeah.
But it's just such a politically charged topic, no one wants to increase, parking rates. How do you kind of get past that and frame it, from a TDM standpoint, how do you get past that and frame it in a way that's more palatable and more politically viable?
Yeah, I think it's really tough, and Buffalo's struggling with it too. They recently raised on-street parking rates from $1 per hour to $2 per hour back in December. That was a big to-do, but they were successful. They were successful. They still have maintained it, but I think really pointing to the opportunity costs, especially in downtown areas, of leaving this prime real estate for for something that's such low value.
Yes.
And then also just from an equity perspective, over the long term, we know that parking does not pay for itself. It's a money hole. Temporary in Buffalo, we're earning some revenue from it now, but it is a kind of subsidy to people who drive and park that's not available to those who are using other modes. So looking at that differential and supporting subsidy, I think, is another angle to talk about it.
Katie, let's stop here. I know you probably have a few more slides, but I know it's after it's our
That was my last
time,
one.
so-
Hey, well, that's really great.
I'm wondering if it's possible that we could get a copy of the presentation and then we can make it available to folks who are here.